Chosen one, it has already been released. Moments ago, heaven made a decision, and what was hidden can no longer remain hidden. The silence is over. Chosen one, this is not coincidence. Out of all the messages you could be watching right now, something brought you here for a reason, because heaven has seen the battles you fought in secret, the waiting, the confusion, the moments you wondered if your prayers were being heard. They were, and that is why something is shifting right now. A revelation is emerging, and it carries an answer connected to everything you've been through recently. But why did heaven wait until this Saturday to reveal it, and what secret has been kept from you until this very moment? Stay with me, because what is about to be uncovered could change how you see your entire season. Because the truth is, this revelation is not arriving to inform you of something heaven just discovered. It is arriving to reveal something heaven has known about you all along. That changes everything. For months, maybe even years, you have been looking at certain disappointments as losses. Doors closed, relationships ended, plans delayed, opportunities disappearing at the last moment. You saw rejection. Heaven saw protection. Heaven saw protection. You saw silence. Heaven saw preparation. You saw delay. Heaven saw positioning. And this is where the secret begins to emerge. Because there were things happening around your life that you were never meant to see while they were happening. Conversations, decisions, spiritual battles, interference, hidden agendas. For a season, heaven allowed those things to remain concealed, not because you were abandoned, but because revealing them too early would have distracted you from the assignment heaven was developing inside you. Think about how many times you almost gave up, how many nights you questioned everything, how many moments you wondered if your faith was being wasted. Yet somehow you kept moving, somehow you kept moving, somehow you kept believing, somehow you survived what should have broken you. That was not your strength alone. That was heaven preserving something, protecting something, guarding something. And the revelation arriving now is connected to that very thing, because there is a reason the pressure increased before this moment, a reason the attacks intensified, a reason confusion seemed to surround you from every direction. The enemy does not panic over what you have already done. The enemy reacts to what is about to be revealed. Let that settle in. The resistance was never proof that you were losing. It was evidence that something valuable was being hidden until the appointed time. And if this message is speaking directly to your spirit, comment "revealed" below as a declaration that what heaven has prepared for you can no longer remain hidden. Now listen carefully, because this next part explains why this particular Saturday matters, not because of a date on a calendar, not because of luck, not because of coincidence, but because heaven operates according to appointed moments. And there are seasons when hidden things remain hidden. Then there are seasons when heaven suddenly removes the covering. What took years to understand becomes clear. What felt confusing begins to make sense. What appeared random reveals divine order. And right now many of you are standing at that exact threshold. A threshold between uncertainty and understanding. A threshold between questioning and confirmation. A threshold between hidden preparation and visible movement. But there is still one piece of this secret that has not been uncovered. And once it is revealed, you may understand why heaven refused to allow certain people to continue walking beside you. Because not every departure was a loss. Some departures were instructions. Some exits were answers to prayers you did not even know you were praying. That is the part many chosen ones struggle to accept. You asked heaven for protection, then certain people disappeared. You asked heaven for direction, then familiar paths suddenly closed. You asked heaven for growth, then comfortable situations began falling apart. At the time it felt cruel. At the time it felt cruel. At the time it felt confusing. At the time it felt unfair. But heaven was responding, not ignoring, responding. The secret is that some people were assigned to your past, not your future, and if they had remained, they would have delayed what heaven had already scheduled for your next season. That is why separation became necessary, That is why distance appeared. That is why certain connections became uncomfortable. You thought something was breaking. Heaven knew something was being exposed, because what is hidden always becomes visible when divine timing arrives. Always. And for many listening right now, the hidden thing was never your weakness. It was your value. The hidden thing was never your failure. It was your calling. The hidden thing was never your lack of ability. It was the magnitude of what heaven placed inside you. There are people who underestimated you because heaven kept your assignment covered. There are people who walked away because they judged you by your current season instead of your coming season. There are people who dismissed what they could not recognize. But heaven recognized it. From the beginning, from before the struggle, from before the delay, from before the tears. And now something is beginning to shift. Quietly, powerfully, unstoppably. You may not see everything yet. You may not have every answer yet, but signs are already appearing, small confirmations, unexpected conversations, strange alignments, doors opening where there were no doors before, moments that seem insignificant until you realize they are connected. Watch closely, because heaven often whispers before it announces. It often hints before it reveals. It often positions before it promotes. And many chosen ones miss the beginning of a breakthrough because they expect thunder when heaven starts with a whisper. Do not ignore the whisper. Do not dismiss the small sign. Do not overlook the unusual confirmation, because what seems small today may be connected to something enormous tomorrow. If you believe heaven is positioning you for something greater, type "I am ready" in the comments. Not as a slogan, as a declaration, because readiness attracts responsibility, and responsibility always comes before revelation. Now here is where this message becomes even more serious. The secret heaven is uncovering is not only about what was removed from your life, it is also about what has been moving toward your life. While you were grieving one thing, heaven was arranging another. While you were focused on what left, heaven was preparing what was coming. While you were looking at the closed door, heaven was building an entirely different entrance. That is why this season feels strange. Part of you senses change. Part of you senses movement. Part of you senses that something significant is approaching, even if you cannot fully explain why. That feeling is not random. It is not imagination. It is not wishful thinking. Your spirit is detecting movement before your eyes can see it. And what makes this even more remarkable is that the people around you may not understand it yet. They see the same circumstances, the same environment, the same challenges, but they do not sense what you sense, because they have not been shown what heaven has shown you. There is a reason for that. There is a reason the revelation was reserved for this moment. There is a reason the veil is beginning to lift now instead of earlier, and the next layer of this revelation explains why the opposition against your life became strongest just before the secret was ready to emerge. This is the pattern many chosen ones fail to recognize. The pressure increases before the breakthrough. The resistance intensifies before the release. The confusion grows louder before the truth becomes clear. That is why the season you have just walked through felt different from previous battles. It wasn't just another challenge. It wasn't just another difficult month. Something deeper was happening. You were approaching a revelation that had the power to change how you see everything. And whenever heaven prepares to uncover something significant, opposition often attempts to create enough noise to distract you from seeing it. Think about what you've experienced recently. The sudden discouragement, the unexpected delays, the emotional exhaustion that seemed to appear out of nowhere, the feeling of carrying a weight you could not fully explain. The moments when doubt tried to convince you that nothing was changing. None of that arrived by accident. Because there are seasons when the greatest battle is not against your future. It is against your perception. If the enemy can convince you that nothing is happening, you may stop looking for what heaven is doing. If the enemy can convince you that your prayers are ineffective, you may stop expecting answers. If the enemy can convince you that the waiting was meaningless, you may miss the revelation when it arrives. But look at yourself. You are still here. still listening, still seeking, still believing. Even after everything, that alone says something powerful about who you are, because many people would have walked away, many people would have surrendered to disappointment, many people would have allowed bitterness to replace faith, yet something inside you refused to quit. Why? Because heaven placed a knowing inside your spirit, a knowing that there was more, a knowing that the story was not over, a knowing that the delay was hiding a purpose you had not yet seen, and that knowing was correct, very correct. The revelation arriving now is proving that what felt like random events were actually connected pieces of a larger picture, a picture you could not see while standing inside it. But heaven could. Every closed door, every redirection, every delay, every uncomfortable transition, every season of isolation, every unanswered question, none of it was wasted. In fact, some of the things that frustrated you the most are about to become the things that make the most sense. The very event that made you ask, "Why did this happen to me?" may soon become the event that causes you to say, "Now I understand." And that understanding is closer than you think. Because heaven is not merely revealing what happened. Heaven is revealing why it happened. There is a difference. Knowing what happened brings information. Knowing why it happened brings freedom. And many of you are entering a season of freedom. Freedom from confusion. Freedom from false guilt. Freedom from carrying responsibility for things that were never your fault to carry. Freedom from believing you somehow missed your destiny. You did not miss it. You were being guided through it, even when it felt unclear, even when it felt painful, even when it felt silent. The guidance never stopped. The protection never stopped. The preparation never stopped. The preparation never stopped. And this next revelation may be one of the most important parts of the entire message, because some of you have been asking heaven the same question over and over. When will it happen? When will I see the evidence? When will the promise become visible? But heaven is now turning that question around, because the greater question is not when. The greater question is whether you recognize the signs that it has already begun. Many chosen ones are waiting for a dramatic announcement, yet heaven often starts with subtle movements, one conversation, one opportunity, one connection, one confirmation, one unexpected shift. And before long, everything begins accelerating. What looked impossible starts becoming possible. What looked closed starts opening. What looked delayed starts moving rapidly. That is why you must pay attention right now. Not next month, not next year. Right now, because there are indicators already appearing around your life. Indicators that something hidden is moving toward visibility. Indicators that heaven is transitioning you from preparation into revelation. Indicators that the secret is no longer being kept in the shadows. But there is still another layer that has not yet been uncovered. A layer connected to the people who doubted you, dismissed you, and assumed your season would never change. And what heaven is about to reveal concerning that may surprise even you. Because one of the greatest secrets heaven has been protecting is not what others thought about you. It is what heaven knew about you. There is a difference. People judged you according to appearances. Heaven judged you according to purpose. People looked at your current situation. Heaven looked at your future assignment. People measured you by what was visible. Heaven measured you by what was hidden. That is why so many misunderstandings surrounded your journey. That is why some people underestimated you. That is why others walked away too quickly. They were making decisions based on a chapter. Heaven was writing the entire story. And right now heaven is pulling back the curtain on something many never saw. The strength you developed in private, the wisdom you gained through suffering, the maturity that emerged through waiting, the faith that survived despite repeated disappointments. None of those things were visible to the people watching you. But heaven saw every moment, every sacrifice, every act of obedience, every tear shed when nobody was around, every prayer whispered when you felt completely alone. Nothing escaped heaven's attention, nothing. And this is where the revelation becomes deeply personal. Because many chosen ones have spent years wondering whether their hidden sacrifices mattered. You kept showing up. You kept believing. You kept trusting, even when there was no applause, even when there was no recognition, even when there was no visible reward. The secret is that heaven often does its greatest work in hidden places. Before promotion comes preparation. Before visibility comes development. Before revelation comes concealment. That is why this season has felt so unusual. You have been standing between two worlds. One season is ending, another season is emerging, and the tension you've been feeling comes from standing in that transition. Part of you knows something is changing. Part of you senses movement. Part of you feels that an answer is near. You cannot fully explain it, but you can feel it. That feeling is not accidental, because heaven is often preparing your spirit for a reality before your eyes can see it. Pay attention to that. The Spirit recognizes movement before circumstances reveal it, and many of you have been sensing movement. You have felt unusual expectation, unusual awareness, unusual sensitivity, almost as if something is trying to get your attention. That is because something is. Heaven is signaling, not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. The signs are there. The confirmations are there. The alignments are there, and they are increasing. In fact, some of you have already received confirmations and dismissed them as coincidence. A message arriving at the perfect time. A conversation that answered a question you never spoke aloud. A sudden opportunity appearing where none existed before. A repeated sign that keeps appearing in unexpected places. You thought it was random. It wasn't. Because heaven is a God of confirmation, and before major revelations become visible, confirmations often begin appearing in small ways. That is happening now. If this message confirms what your spirit has already been sensing, type "confirmed" below. Not because a comment changes heaven's plan, but because declarations strengthen expectation, and expectation prepares you to recognize what heaven is revealing. Now listen carefully, because the next part explains why the secret could not be revealed earlier. This is important. Had heaven shown you everything too soon, you might have trusted the revelation more than the revealer. You might have focused on the blessing and forgotten the process. You might have rushed ahead before your character was ready to carry what was coming. That is why timing matters. Divine timing is not about delay. It is about readiness. Heaven does not simply prepare promises for people. Heaven prepares people for promises. Read that again in your spirit. Heaven does not simply prepare promises for people. Heaven prepares people for promises. And that is exactly what has been happening in your life. The waiting was preparation. The silence was preparation. The setbacks were preparation. The unexpected detours were preparation. Even the moments that seemed pointless were preparing something inside you. Strength, discernment, patience, wisdom, dependence on God, the very qualities you will need in the season ahead. Because the season ahead is different, very different. And that is another reason the opposition intensified. The closer you moved toward revelation, the more pressure attempted to convince you that nothing was changing. But something was changing. Behind the scenes, in places you could not see, in ways you could not measure. Heaven was arranging details, aligning people, opening pathways, removing obstacles, creating connections, and positioning events that would eventually intersect with your purpose. You thought nothing was happening. Meanwhile, heaven was moving pieces into place. And what makes this revelation so powerful is that some of those pieces are beginning to arrive now. Not years from now, not someday, now. Which raises a question many have not considered. What if the thing you have been praying for is already moving toward you? What if the answer has already been released? What if the delay you feel is not because heaven said no, but because heaven is orchestrating the exact moment when everything connects? Because the next layer of this revelation uncovers something extraordinary about the timing of what is approaching your life right now. Timing is one of the greatest mysteries in the kingdom. Most people focus on the promise. Heaven focuses on the moment. Most people ask, "What is coming?" Heaven asks, "Are you ready when it arrives?" And that is exactly why this revelation could not have come sooner. There were pieces still moving, details still aligning, lessons still being learned, strength still being developed inside you. You were not being denied, you were being completed. That is a difficult truth for many to accept, because when you are standing inside a season of waiting, it feels as though nothing is changing. Day after day, prayer after prayer, month after month, everything appears the same. Yet beneath the surface, heaven is accomplishing more than you realize. Seeds grow underground before they break through the soil. Foundations are built before buildings rise into view. Preparation happens before manifestation. Always. And what heaven is revealing now is that your season of hidden preparation has reached a turning point. Not because every challenge is over, not because every question has been answered, but because the purpose behind the season is beginning to emerge. For a long time, you only saw fragments. A closed door here, a delay there, a painful ending somewhere else, individual events that seemed disconnected. But heaven never saw fragments. Heaven saw the pattern, the complete picture, the larger design. That picture is starting to come into focus, slowly, piece by piece, revelation by revelation. And when it does, one realization may strike you harder than anything else. You were never behind. You were never forgotten. You were never overlooked. The enemy wanted you to believe that. Your circumstances tried to suggest it. Certain voices tried to convince you of it. But none of it was true, because heaven does not lose track of those it has called, not for a day, not for an hour, not for a moment, even during the seasons when you felt invisible, even during the nights when nobody checked on you, even during the battles you fought without support. Heaven's attention never left you. That is why this season has been different. The pressure was greater because the transition was greater. The resistance was stronger because the assignment ahead is greater. The testing was deeper because the responsibility ahead is greater. And many chosen ones misunderstand this. They assume increased pressure means they are moving in the wrong direction. Often the opposite is true. Pressure increases when movement increases. Opposition increases when purpose becomes clearer. Resistance increases when revelation approaches. Think back over the last season. Have there been moments when confusion seemed unusually intense? Moments when discouragement appeared without explanation? Moments when fear tried to speak louder than faith? Those moments were not random. Something was being contested. Not your identity, not your value, not your destiny, your awareness. Because once awareness arrives, everything changes. Once you see clearly, you cannot return to blindness. Once truth is revealed, confusion loses its power. Once heaven uncovers what was hidden, the entire season begins to make sense. That is why revelation is so dangerous to darkness. Revelation exposes, revelation clarifies, revelation liberates, and what heaven is uncovering now has the power to break years of misunderstanding, years of self-doubt, years of questioning, years of wondering why certain things happened the way they did. Some answers are closer than you think, closer than they have ever been. In fact, there are events already unfolding around you that seem ordinary on the surface. But they are not ordinary. A shift in a relationship, a sudden conversation, an unexpected opportunity, a new sense of urgency, a growing feeling that something is about to change. These are not isolated moments, they are signals, indicators, evidence that movement has already begun. Because one of the greatest secrets about divine timing is this: when heaven prepares to reveal something significant, the evidence often appears before the explanation. You begin noticing movement before you understand it. You begin sensing change before you can describe it. You begin feeling expectation before you know exactly why. That may be where you are right now, standing in a moment you cannot fully explain, feeling something you cannot fully define, sensing a shift you cannot fully see, yet knowing deep inside that this season is different from every season before it. And the reason it feels different is because something that has remained hidden for a very long time is approaching the point of visibility. Not eventually, not somewhere in the distant future, sooner than many realize, because there is another layer to this revelation that heaven has not yet fully uncovered, a layer connected to the very thing that has been quietly developing behind the scenes while your attention was focused elsewhere. And once that hidden development becomes visible, you may understand why heaven guarded this secret so carefully for so long. Because some things are too valuable to be exposed before their appointed time. A seed exposed too early can be damaged. A foundation revealed too early can be disrupted. A calling announced too early can attract opposition before preparation is complete. That is why heaven often works in hidden places, not to keep blessings from you, but to protect them for you. And what has been protected in your life is far greater than you imagine. For a long time you believed heaven was working on your circumstances. The truth is that heaven was working on you. Your circumstances were simply the classroom. The real transformation was happening within. Your perspective was changing. Your discernment was growing. Your dependence on God was deepening. Your strength was increasing. And perhaps most importantly, your identity was becoming clearer, because the enemy's greatest strategy was never to stop your destiny. It was to make you forget who you are. If you forget who you are, you question what heaven said. If you question what heaven said, you hesitate. If you hesitate, you delay what was meant to move through you. That is why so many attacks targeted your confidence. That is why so many situations targeted your faith. That is why so many disappointments tried to convince you that you were ordinary. But heaven never called you ordinary. Never, even in your weakest moments. Even in your most confused moments. Even in the moments when you could not recognize yourself. Heaven still saw the assignment, still saw the purpose, still saw the future. And now the veil is beginning to lift. Slowly, but unmistakably, the things that once confused you are beginning to connect. The things that once felt random are beginning to reveal a pattern. The things that once seemed meaningless are beginning to show purpose. This is why the revelation feels so powerful, because it is not merely showing you what is ahead, it is showing you what was happening all along. Suddenly the waiting has context. Suddenly the struggle has meaning. Suddenly the silence has an explanation. And when that realization fully settles into your spirit, something remarkable happens. Peace replaces panic. Confidence replaces confusion. Expectation replaces discouragement, because you begin to understand that heaven was never absent. It was active the entire time. If this message is speaking directly to your spirit, take a moment to like this video as a declaration that you believe heaven has been working behind the scenes even when you could not see it. Because what comes next may be one of the most important revelations yet. The hidden development heaven has been protecting is not only connected to your future, it is connected to your influence. There are people you have not met yet whose lives will be affected by your obedience. There are doors you have not walked through yet that will impact more than just you. There are assignments waiting ahead that require the very lessons you learned during this difficult season. Nothing was wasted. Not the tears, not the delays, not the disappointments, not the waiting. Every part of it has been collected into something greater, something purposeful, something divinely designed, and this is where many chosen ones underestimate what heaven is doing. They think the preparation was only for a blessing, but heaven is preparing them to become a blessing. That changes the entire perspective, because heaven's plans are always bigger than the individual. The revelation is bigger than comfort. The breakthrough is bigger than relief. The assignment is bigger than personal success. There are ripple effects attached to your obedience that you cannot yet see. Lives connected to your courage. People connected to your faithfulness. Opportunities connected to your willingness to keep going when everything told you to quit. That is why the preparation had to be thorough. That is why the process took time. That is why certain things could not be rushed. The weight of what is coming required the strength that was being developed. And now that strength exists, not perfectly, not completely, but far more than you realize, which is why heaven is allowing this revelation to emerge now. Because you are no longer the same person who entered the season. You have changed, you have grown, you have been refined. And the version of you standing here today is capable of carrying what the version of you from years ago could not have carried. That is part of the secret, a major part. The delay was not just about preparing the promise. It was about preparing the person. And now another layer is beginning to unfold, a layer connected to a specific shift that has already started taking place around your life, a shift so subtle that many would overlook it, yet so significant that it has the potential to alter the direction of everything that follows. And here is the revelation heaven has been waiting to uncover. The secret was never that your breakthrough was coming. The secret was that it was already being arranged while you thought nothing was happening. While you were waiting, heaven was working. While you were questioning, heaven was positioning. While you were hurting, heaven was preparing. Everything you survived was preparation for this moment. Every battle strengthened you. Every delay refined you. Every delay refined you. Every disappointment redirected you. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. Nothing escaped the hands of God. That is why heaven refused to keep this secret hidden any longer. Because there comes a moment when preparation must give way to revelation. A moment when hidden things become visible. A moment when answers begin replacing questions. And many of you have arrived at that moment. The season of wondering is ending. The season of understanding is beginning, not because life will suddenly become perfect, but because heaven is giving you clarity about what it has been doing all along. The truth is that God never stopped leading you, never stopped protecting you, never stopped fighting for you. Even when you couldn't feel it, even when you couldn't see it, even when you doubted it. He was there, and He is here now. So receive this confirmation deep in your spirit. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are not disqualified. You are not abandoned. You are exactly where heaven has been guiding you. And what God has prepared for your next season is greater than the fear, confusion, and disappointment of your last season. If you receive this word today, type IT is time in the comments as a declaration of faith. And if this message encouraged you, make sure to like this video and share it with someone who needs this confirmation right now. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for every person watching this message. Thank you for sustaining them through seasons they never thought they would survive. Thank you for protecting them when they could not see your hand. Thank you for guiding them when they could not understand your plan. Lord, remove every remaining doubt. Replace confusion with clarity. Replace fear with faith. Replace discouragement with expectation. Reveal what needs to be revealed. Open what needs to be opened. Close what needs to be closed. And help your people trust your timing above their own understanding. Let this new season bring confirmation, peace, direction, and divine favor. Remind every person listening that they are seen, known, chosen, and deeply loved by you. In Jesus' mighty name, Amen. Remember this, the secret is no longer hidden. The revelation has begun, and heaven is not finished with your story.